And so in this course, we have tackled a whole range of problems. So we have tackled operational problems like inventory management, how much items for you to actually order in terms of uncertain demand. We've also tackled sort of like broader questions as well, be it in terms of, let's say, private car ownership in Singapore. And so today, what I hope to wrap up with is this topic of what does it mean to have a successful life? And perhaps you may say that how is this relevant to our course? Hopefully by the end of today's lecture, that is going to be apparent to you. And so that is what I aim to discuss today. And I have put up a poll EV link over there. So today there isn't any questions that I have from my end for you. But if you have any questions along the way throughout the lecture, feel free to always just raise them up. Alternatively, feel free to just type your questions into the poll EV, and then at the end of the lecture, we will just run through them. Okay, so today's poll EV is optional. You don't have to do it, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them in, and I will be happy to answer them at the end of today's lecture. So as mentioned, today what I hope to tackle is this question of what does it mean to be successful? And within Singapore's context, I guess the conventional understanding of success is going to be academic achievements. The fact that you are seated over here means that you have done relatively well academically speaking, right? So that's why you are kind of over here. Okay, that you are probably above the median for Singaporeans, at least when it comes to your academic achievements over there. But based on our understanding or our conventional understanding of success, academic achievements, hopefully the next step that it's going to lead into is going to be a good career. And that's why you are here at the university, hopefully for the last lap of your academic training before you go out there to work, or alternatively before you decide to pursue higher academic type of qualifications and move into research and so on. And having a good career is not the end game, right? So that's where after having a good career, hopefully that leads to wealth. And I guess over here what we mean by wealth is going to be in terms of financial wealth over there. And that is going to be the typical type of understanding of what success is going to be. And so this is where I ask GPT image, I say that come up with an image of successful people. And so then this is the image that GPT image gave me. Seems to be quite aligned with at least our understanding of what success is. But of course you realize that this appears to be a more Western version of it, right? So just to be sure, I asked GPT that, can you describe what successful agents are? And so apparently, according to GPT, it's the same. It's just that you just change them to angels. And so from GPT's understanding, the notion of success or a successful life, be it in terms of a Western culture, be it in terms of an Asian context, seems to be very similar. Of course, that's debatable, right? You could potentially say that in the Western context, there is more focus on individual achievements, individualism, individual performance. Within the Asian context, there is more focus on family, relationship, and the group that you are in. Okay, but nonetheless, at least from GPT's point of view, the notion of success seems to be aligned with what we have over here. Academic achievements leading to good career, leading to financial wealth over there. Okay, and so let's use that as our basis and let's ask the question, what does it mean to be successful? Or is this really what success is about in life? Okay, and so this is where I want to put the context as to this, right? So why am I discussing this topic? I hope you realize that the topics I discuss is not because I'm interested in them, but it is because I'm interested in them, but at the same time, I think that there is relevance for us to look at it. Okay, so be it in terms of, let's say, private car ownership. In fact, you were the ones who voted to say that you wanted to work on private car ownership, right? And multiple examples, inventory management, news vendor problem. I hope I've demonstrated to you why those examples were important to convey certain types of concepts over there. Okay, and so let's talk about why should we be interested in the definition of a successful life. And so this was taken from a video message from our Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong. This was back in June last year. And he made this comment, which is that there needs to be a broader definition of success. And what is the reason for that? The reason for that is because our current definition of success, which is based on narrow matrix of academic and material achievements, which is what we said just now, has become a problem. It has led to competition. Okay, and competition in itself may not be a bad thing, but it has led to toxic competition, which is harmful. Okay, it has led to toxic competition where Singaporeans seek to outdo one another, and people have become more frenetic. And I guess being academically smart, you can appreciate this statement, right? Which is that it is mathematically impossible for everybody to be above average. The very definition of average means that some people are going to be above average and some people are going to be below average. And if your definition of success is based on academic achievements, is based on material wealth, based on being above average in these measures, I hope you can see why that is where you are going to run into competition and toxic competition. And to make matters worse, not only are individual Singaporeans anxious and stressed, they then actually pass it down to the children, who then subsequently become even more anxious and even more stressed. And it becomes a cycle that perpetuates over time over there. And so I think what I'm trying to say over here is that the competition level in Singapore, or I guess what the Prime Minister Lawrence Wong is trying to say is that competition in Singapore, it's at an unhealthy level to the detriment of everyone. Which means that everybody is worse off because of this. Correct? If everybody just agreed to say that, okay, let's just chill and relax, everybody would have a good life, right? But obviously, the competitiveness of Singapore is going to suffer over there. But and that's probably not good. But at the same time, we are at the other extreme, or we are close to the other side of the pendulum, where it seems like competition is a bit too much, where it's unhealthy, and it's actually being detrimental to the well-being of everybody. Okay, and so that seems to be the issue. And what is the cause of it? I mean, this follows from that definition that we cannot all be above average, right? And so it is because the competition arises because we have a lot of people chasing after similar things, which are limited in quantity. And so that's where you get that anxiety, that's where you get the toxic competition over there. So what's the solution? Obviously, I have to agree with our Prime Minister, right? Because I teach at an autonomous university. So one of the solutions is going to be that we need a broader definition of success. Okay, but I promise you I will elaborate more on that. But that, in my opinion, it's one of the solutions. And so I have a picture over here. You realize that, the road to success isn't kind of just one path. There are going to be multiple paths because there are going to be multiple definitions of what it means to be successful. But I want to add in a second point as well, which is that in the ideal case, success shouldn't depend on something that is limited in quantity, because the mathematical rule remains there, which is that we cannot all be above average, which means that if we are all competing for something, there is going to always be that potential of competition turning toxic over there. And so the other way to look at it is that, can success actually be dependent on things that are not limited? Or more importantly, not should it be dependent, but in practice, does it make sense for success to actually be dependent on things that are actually not limited? Okay, not just because it's a good idea, not just because it makes life easy for us, but because that is really what success actually means to us. Okay, and so we will talk about that. And so the first thing I want to talk about is this relationship between success and happiness. Because if you were to look at the image that GPT generated for me, the other point to note, besides sort of like the impression of academic excellence, besides the impression of having a good career, besides the impression of wealth, is that you see that these individuals are happy. Okay, and so the question is that, does it mean that having a successful life equates to being happy, or being happy equates to a successful life, or the two of them are related but are also different in some sense? But before we get to that, let me just talk a bit. Let me provide you some information over there. So this is the median salary in Singapore by age group. Okay, and you're going to realize that average salary is going to peak at about 45 to 49 years old in Singapore. Okay, so it doesn't mean that this is going to be the case for everybody. Okay, so some people may continue to have their salary increase over time well into retirement. Whereas for some people, they may potentially get retrenched, might have to settle for a job that pays lesser going forward, and so on. But if you look across the nation, broadly speaking, average salary is going to peak at about, in fact, it's about 40 to 49 years old. That's the period where your salary peaks over there. Okay? Unfortunately, that's where I am. Okay? And so going forward, my consumption decisions have to be a bit more conservative compared to what they were in the past. Okay? Don't worry, you guys are right at the start over there, so you have something positive to look forward to. By the way, the links are all there, so I leave it to you to just read up on them further, okay? Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the poll EV, and then we can talk about them later on. So that's in terms of earning power. What about happiness? Yep, we have a question. Okay, good. We have a question over here. Is this exam related? And the answer is no. So for the exam, I wouldn't test you on this material. Today's lecture is optional. Like, you know, the poll EV is optional. Yes.
Really funny. You should put in one MCQ question.
Okay. Because I've said that it's optional, so I will not put in the MCQ question, but thanks for that. Okay, I hope that clarifies that. So once again, it's really an application of the concepts that we have studied. But more importantly, I think that it is an important part, or there are some important messages I hope to share as you begin your university life over here. Okay, hopefully that will help you start preparing for the point in time where you're going to graduate. Okay, so but thanks for the clarification, not examinable. Okay, going back, so we have talked about earning power, right? It's going, for Singapore, it's going to peak at about 45 to 99 years old. There have also been studies that people try to look at happiness across age. And this is what has been typically observed. It could be controversial because there are many confounding factors, and so different type of research do come to different conclusions. But this is something that would be broadly agreed by many people, which is that on average, people typically start out their adult life pretty cheerful. And so as you start to go out to work, typically you are expected to be pretty cheerful over there. And then as you progress into middle age, that is where work responsibilities start to grow heavier. Family commitments start to get more complicated. You have to not only worry about your partner, you have to worry about your children, you have to worry about your aging parents, and you have to worry about all your relatives around there. Okay, and so that's where they say, the article says that things go downhill from youth to middle age. Okay, but they highlighted that as people move towards old age, they gain what they spend their life pursuing, which is happiness. And so what is mentioned in the article is that after you've gone through that middle age over there, the happiness seems to tick up again. Perhaps because you realize, what is important in life, or you have kind of gone through it, right? Okay, and so that's what people say, that when it comes to happiness, there seems to be this U-shape over there. But more interestingly, this period where you have the lowest happiness, that is the age period of between 40 to 50 years old. And so if you were to look between these two graphs, the period of 40 to 50 years old, that is where the average earning power is the highest, but at the same time, the average happiness is going to be the lowest as well. Okay, so I'm not using this to say that earning more money means that you're going to be more miserable. Okay, obviously we know that that's not true, right? Correlation doesn't equate causation. But I think the message that we're trying to say over here is that just having high earning power or being wealthy is not going to be equivalent to happiness over there. Okay, and so this is where you need to think about what is it that really what is the purpose of your life? What is it that you're going to be pursuing in your life? More research. So there are researchers who try to answer the question or the relationship between wealth and happiness more directly. And so that's where they answer this question by just looking at the wealth of the individual and also the happiness of the individual, rather than what we did just now by proxy over there. Okay, and these types of studies actually do show that on average, or all else being equal, people tend to be happier the more money that they have. Okay, and so on average, the more money you have, the happier you're going to be. But of course, I think most of us can recognize that the relationship between wealth and happiness is going to have a concave nature over there. So by this point in time, you should be very familiar with a concave curve, or the idea of diminishing returns, which is that when your entire net worth is $100, giving you another $100 is going to make you very happy. But when your net worth is $1 million, giving you an additional $100 is not going to mean as much anymore. Okay? And so that is going to be true. The more money you have, the happier you're going to be. In the worst case, if you don't like it, just give it away, right? You're going to be happier. But at the same time, it's going to have diminishing returns. The other thing to take note of over here, the researchers do recognize that it is entirely possible for you to be rich but miserable. Okay, I do not know if you know of a specific person like that, but if you look at society as a whole, I'm sure you can identify people who are rich but miserable. And it is also entirely possible for you to be poor but happy as well. And the reason for that is because money is just one of many things that matter for happiness. And so there are going to be multiple things that is going to affect whether if you are going to be happy or not. And money is just one of the many factors. Okay, and so this is where you could think of, and I guess what you need to do is that you need to find the right balance between these multiple factors over there. And the art of balancing between conflicting factors is once again something we have discussed in this class. And so what are the things that could matter for happiness. So it could be financial wealth, but it could also be family, friends, relationships. It could also be wealth, physical wealth, mental wealth, and so on. And so if we were to think about this in terms of a mathematical model, your happiness is going to be some function of, let's say, wealth, family, health, and so on, right? So those are going to be the factors that contribute to your happiness. But at the same time, the significance of each of these factors is going to differ for different people. So for some people, perhaps financial wealth is going to matter a lot. For other people, perhaps family relations is going to matter a lot more. For other people, they might be more concerned about their health, physical health, their mental health, and so on. Okay, and so what it means is that the coefficients over here are going to be different for different people. And at the same time, the effort that is going to be required is also going to be different for different people as well. Some people, by virtue of their DNA, by virtue of their genetics, are going to be more athletic. And so for these individuals, how much they are going to be able to achieve in terms of their physical health is going to be higher. Their X value is going to be higher compared to those who have a body structure that probably is less athletic and so on. Or alternatively, you can say that the person with a more athletic DNA needs to put in less effort in order to achieve a certain level of physical health compared to somebody who does not have those great DNA over there. Okay, and that is going to form your constraints, right? Which is, how do you spend the 24 hours that you have? How much time you allocate to your exercise, how much time you allocate to accumulation of wealth and so on. Okay, and so the effort required is also different for different individuals, and that's going to affect the X values that you can potentially achieve, or how much effort you need to put into achieving those X values over there. And the bottom line over here is this, which is that the optimal path to success is going to be different for everybody. Simply because this equation over here is going to be different for everybody. The X variables are going to be different. The coefficient values are going to be different. How easy or how difficult it is for you to achieve various X levels are also going to be different as well. Okay, and so we are all like individuals over here where there are multiple paths before us. And I think the thing that you want to note over here, which is that unfortunately, very often what we see is that everybody seems to be congregated at one path over there because everybody has that same notion of success. Everybody believes that that path leads to success over there. So we need to ask ourselves, is this really the path of success for us? And the other thing you want to take note of is that it is much easier to walk on a path that is empty rather than to work against other people on a very congested path over there. And so this is where we come back to our idea of toxic competition, right? We had two solutions. The first one over here is that we need a broader definition of success. And to address that point, I think what we need to do is that first, we need to help everybody recognize that the optimal path to success differs for everybody. So for you, I like to think I have an easy job because you're already familiar with linear regression, you're already familiar with mathematical modeling. And so when I give you that equation, I tell you that the C values differ for everybody, the X variables differ for everybody, and so on. I hope that you are able to appreciate my argument that the optimal path differs for everybody over there. Okay, but I think the first step is to help people recognize that the optimal path is different for everyone. If not, we have everybody just going on that narrow path, which may not be leading to the success that they are looking for. But the second aspect of it is then going to be that not only do people need to recognize that it is different, we also need to help people discover or recognize what is that optimal path of success for them. And so for that, I kind of want us to think about it a bit more. Objectively speaking, I hope it makes sense to say that it is not so much about how much money you have, but what you do with your money that actually matters over there. Okay, and so Arthur Brooks, he is a professor of practice at Harvard, and so this is where he says that there are 5 things you can do with money. And of these 5 things, only 4 are going to bring you happiness. Okay, and so what are the 5 things? Number 1, you can buy stuff. Number 2, you can buy experiences. For example, go on a holiday and so on. Number 3, you can buy time. So for example, you outsource your chores to somebody else so that you free yourself of those duties. Number 4, you can give it away. So it can be in terms of Christmas presents, or it could be in terms of just your Chinese New Year ang pao, or it could just be giving to charity and so on. And the last one, you could save it so that perhaps earn interest so that you have more money to buy stuff, buy experience, buy time, or give it away in the future. And so according to Arthur Brooks over here, buying stuff is not going to get you happiness. Okay, the remaining 4 will, but buying stuff is not going to be. So why did he say that? He said that because he has come, I suspect he has come across people that think that buying a fancy car is going to make them happy. Okay, and so those people go on to buy a nice car. And then after they buy the nice car, they realize that they are not much happier, or they are not as much happier as they thought they would be. And so then they think that they need an even better car. And so then they keep going after a better and better and better car. And I believe what Arthur Brooks is saying over here is that people end up in a pointless chase where they're going for something which doesn't give them the happiness that they want. And they continue down that unfortunate path. Okay, but this is where I disagree with Arthur over there. So let me share my story with you. So I did my graduate studies at Florida, and so I spent 5 years over there. And so the city that the university was in, it didn't have very elaborate public transports. Okay, and so for the first year, getting around was difficult, and then I realized that, okay, I need to buy a car over there. As a graduate student, a brand new car is out of my budget. Okay, and so I was just looking at second-hand cars. So as I was looking around for second-hand cars, I saw this sports car. A nice sports car, second-hand. I think at that point in time it was like 6 years old or something like that. And it was going for $3,500. Back then, $3,500 is a lot more than it is today. But nonetheless, it is something that a graduate student is going to be able to afford over there. Okay, so in context, a brand new car back then would have cost like $12,000 or $13,000. So $3,500, it is still doable for a graduate student. Okay, so I contacted the owner. Turns out that the owner was a postdoc fellow. He has just completed his stay in Florida, so he was heading back to his country. He was just looking for somebody to offload his car and so on. So $3,500. And so we sent the car to the mechanic. The mechanic said that there were no issues. Then I went ahead and with the deal over there. So I'm going to say that that sports car actually did bring me a lot of joy. In the US, in a town without good public transport, the fact that you have your own transportation means that you open up a whole new world to you. There are so many more places you can go and so on. Okay, and the fact that a sports car, I think most guys would think that, having a sports car, you should try it once in your life, right? That's where you know whether you like it or not. So I'm going to say that my personal experience makes me disagree with Arthur over there, which is that I think that buying things can bring happiness as well. Okay? I can see where he's coming from. I think that there is a lot of wisdom in what he says, which is that there are many material things that will not bring you happiness. But nonetheless, I think that there are still going to be things, material things, that could bring you joy. Second example, still from my graduate school days. So back then, I think that as I was walking through the supermarket, I realized that there was a big flat screen TV. Okay, so those were in the early 2000s over there. So this was like close to 20 years ago. So, I saw a big flat screen TV in the supermarket. It's a bit of a splurge. But nonetheless, I thought, wow, it would be really cool to have it. And so I bought the TV as well. And once again, I'm going to say that that TV has brought me a lot of joy, at least throughout my whole stay when I was doing my graduate studies. Today, in my apartment, I have quite a few furnitures that, obviously, these are all generated by, Gen AI, so they are not my photos over there. My wife says, do not use any of our photos on your lectures, okay? And so all these are all Gen AI. But there are a few pieces of furniture in my home that I really like. Every time I go home, I look at my sofa, I'm like, wow, this is nice. And most of these things that I really like, I wouldn't say that they are value for money. Okay, so before I buy them, I know that I'm splurging on it. Okay, but the reason why I do it, why I decide to go ahead with the purchase, is because I like it. Okay, and so I think that there are material things that could bring you joy, if that is what you like. This is the last example I want to share. So during my secondary school days, so this is a long time ago, secondary school days, that's probably about 30 years ago, I think. Yeah, so about 30 years ago, the guy who was sitting beside me had a watch of this particular brand, which back then I was like, oh wow. I didn't know that a secondary school boy can wear a watch of this type of brands and so on. Okay, and then fast forward 20 years. As I started to work in NUS, I have to say NUS does give me a decent salary, so they're not mistreating me. And so after I started working at NUS, I had a bit more ability to buy some of the things that I like. Okay, so I don't have to settle for a second-hand car and things like that, right? But one of the first things that I went to splurge on was essentially on a watch of that brand. Okay, so back when I was in secondary school, I was like, oh wow, it would be really cool to have a watch of that brand. And after I started working, I was like, yeah, sure, I could afford it now. So I went in, and then the salespeople were very friendly, and basically I could choose whichever watch I like. Okay, and so basically I just look at it, and then I realized that, hey, this is the best out of this whole bunch, and so that's why I got it. Today, if you realize that for all the lectures, I don't wear a watch, because after I bought the watch, I realized that I don't like to wear watches. It's a hassle. It's a hassle to have something on your hand, especially if it's metallic, it is heavy. To me, it's a hassle. Do I regret buying the watch? No, because it was a childhood dream. And I think the act of just purchasing it, the act of just being able to say that I could do it if I want to, I think that in itself is great. But of course, the fact that you buy it, put it at home, just watch it, that brought me joy as well. I'm not saying that you have to do all this. I think what I'm trying to say over here is that you know yourself the best. Okay, you know what you like, you know what you don't like. And so you just do what you think is right over there. Okay? And don't let people tell you what is it that will bring you happiness or what is it that will not bring you happiness. Don't let people tell you this is worth it, this is not worth it, and so on. If you think it's worth it, just go for it. After you buy it, you realize you don't like it that much. That's life, right? Just go on with life with that. And that's where we come to this second point over here, which is that we have an imperfect understanding of ourselves. We don't know everything about ourselves. And so there's the process of trying to understand us a bit more and so on. Okay, so I think for today's lecture, nothing too technical. So I'm just going to breeze through all the way so that we can end as early as possible. But it's recorded, so if you need to use the restroom, just use the restroom, and then we can review that afterwards. Okay, and so this is where we want to talk about exploration, right? So we need to know more about ourselves. Self-awareness, I think that's important as well. So in our class, we have already talked about the relationship between exploration costs and exploration benefits. So I don't think I have to go into that again. But what is important is that you need to know what you like and what you don't like over there. And as I've explained just now, right? I really didn't know I don't like to wear a watch until I bought it. Okay, but once you have bought it, you have tried it, you get to know more about yourself. And once you know about yourself, you can make sure you don't make the same mistakes going forward over there. At the same time, it's not just about what you like and what you don't like, but it is also what you are good at and what you are not so good at over there. Okay, and it's only when you have a good understanding of where your strengths and your weaknesses are, then only are you able to decide for yourself what are the areas you want to improve on, what are the areas I want to leverage on, and so on. I think the message that I want to say over here is that you need to take ownership of yourself rather than to leave it to people to determine it for you. So you need to figure out for yourself, what is it that you like, what is it that you don't like? What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Because once again, you are the one who knows yourself the best over there. Don't leave it to other people to tell you that. And my experience so far has been that a lot of people do not actually have very good self-awareness. Okay, and so it's really a case of the blind leading the blind. You know, people telling you that, hey, this is going to make you happy, this is going to make you... You know, it's really a case of the blind leading the blind. You want to be careful about that. But at the same time, don't go to the extreme to say that, you know, I'm not going to listen to other people. You need to recognize that we have our own blind spots over there. And so this is where we need to listen to the opinions of other people, but it doesn't mean that we have to follow or totally accept their opinion. So recall in our class we talk about conditional probability, right? Which is that the police officer will use a breath analyzer to analyze whether if the driver is drunk or not. Because there is going to be a certain failure rate, we are not going to blindly accept whatever conclusion comes from there. And this is going to be the same thing as well, which is that the opinions of people have potentially some value in the information that they provide you. But it is not perfect information. Okay, and so what you should do is not to totally accept it or totally ignore it, but you want to blend that into your original belief, your original understanding of who you are as an individual. Okay, and so I believe you know how to do the math of it, so I wouldn't go into that, but you can apply that into your own personal life as well. Okay, this is a question that I'm sure arises a lot. So perhaps, I hope I've convinced you that you need to invest some time, some resources to explore, to better understand yourself. So a question might arise, which is that, how do we know that our exploration is always going to yield useful information? So let me pose this question to you. So suppose you woke up in the middle of a tunnel, and you know that this tunnel, actually, on one end, is going to be an exit. On the other end, it stretches all the way to infinite. It stretches infinitely long over there. My question, is it possible to escape from this tunnel? Anyone? You all understand the question? Okay? Is it possible to escape from this tunnel? Okay, I hear 50-50, so that's right. That means if you go one end, there's a 50% chance, the other end. Is there a way that you are guaranteed to be able to escape from this tunnel? Alternate. So how do we alternate?
You walk one path until a certain point, you walk through the other path.
Okay, thanks for that. So the suggestion is let's alternate, right? We walk one path. Let's say we go to the right. We walk, until a certain stage, we go like, this is not working out. Let's go back, and then let's walk on the left side and walk. And then at a certain point, we decide that, hey, this is not working out. Then we walk back the right side again. Is that right? Okay, that's right? And I agree with that. So let's think about this. Where is the complexity in this problem? Yeah, go ahead.
You don't know how far the exit is from like where you are in the tunnel.
Yes. So the complexity of this problem is that you don't know how far the exit is, right? Because once you have that information, problem solved. I just walk, let's say I told you it's 10 kilometers. I just walk 10 kilometers. I realize it's not there. I know that I need to walk 20 kilometers. I'll be out of this tunnel. This problem is complicated by the fact that you don't know how far the tunnel is or where the exit is. So how do we solve it? We solve it by incrementally gaining information. So what we could do is that we could go to the right side. I walk 10 kilometers. I realize, okay, the exit is not 10 kilometers to the right. So I walk 10 kilometers back to where I started. I walk another 10 kilometers to the left. If unfortunately the exit is not there, then what I would have at least known is that the exit must be at least more than 10 kilometers from where I started. So what do? I could walk another 10 kilometers to the left, right? And then I can at least say that, okay, it's not 20 kilometers to the left. Then I go back. And so incrementally, I'm building up my information until a point where I find the exit. So you are exactly right. The fact that we do not know how far the exit is, it's a big problem. But at the same time, by alternating between the left and right, we will still be able to get out of the tunnel over there. But what I hope that you realize from this example over here, which is that you have to recognize that the making of mistakes, the wasted steps over there, don't see them as mistakes. Objectively, those are part of that exploration process. They are part of the cost that you have put in order to acquire the information. Very often, what stops people is that they are very worried about, making mistakes, wasting time, wasting resources. But this is where you need to go back and ask yourself, how valuable is that information? Because in the absence of this information, there is no way you can get out of that tunnel. But once you have that information, the problem becomes straightforward over there. Same thing when it comes to purchases, right? So sometimes you worry too much. If I buy this, will I like this? Will I not like that? And so on. So like I mentioned, right, sometimes you just got to view it as part of this learning process. Okay? Because if you don't make these mistakes, you will never know about yourself. It is just like machine learning, right? You can't just train with all the correct data. You need to train with incorrect data as well, so that it is able to tell what is right from wrong. Okay, and so, for example, I like to use this example of the car over here. So sometimes you worry, will I enjoy the sports car? Will I not enjoy the sports car? My suggestion is, if you think that there's a reasonable chance that you're going to enjoy it, just go ahead and purchase it, recognizing that the moment you drive that car out of the store, that car has dropped in 20% in value. Okay? But at the same time, after you drive it for 1 month, you realize that, hey, I don't like this. Sell it off, at least get back the 80%, right? So your cost is going to be that 20% you have lost over there. Alternatively, what you could do is that rather than to buy the car, you could just rent a sports car for 1 month. Okay, rent a sports car for 1 month, see whether you like it or not. Take the rental cost as basically the cost of acquiring the information, or whether this is something, this is a lifestyle that you want or not. Okay, so once again, I think what you need to be aware of is that information is valuable. It is worthwhile to put in some time, some resources in order to acquire information that can help you in your subsequent decision making. Okay, so that's about exploration. So the next thing I want to talk about, so we've talked about how financial wealth will not make you happy or does not directly make you happy. And so I want to talk about what is it that matters to people. And so Abraham Maslow is an American psychologist. And so he has come up with this model highlighting that humans have 5 needs. So the first level of needs is physiological needs, things like air, water, food, shelter, and so on. At the second level, he talks about safety needs, security and predictability in one's environment. So things like personal security, health and well-being, having a stable environment, and so on. Third level of needs is going to be love and belonging, or you can understand it as social connection and acceptance. Okay, so this is like family, friends, and so on. Moving up, fourth level of needs is going to be esteem. So this is going to be recognition, competence, and respect. And respect can be respect from others and also respect from yourself as well. And the fifth level that he has over there, he describes it as self-actualization, or essentially the realization of one's full potential. Okay, so I will talk about some aspects which I think are going to be elements of success, and then I'm going to link them back to Maslow's model of needs over there. So I think that the relationship between success and achievement, it's going to be there, right? Because success in itself means that, oh, I have achieved something or so on. Okay, and so I would say that academic achievements or anything that you strive for and you achieve over there, okay, those are going to be considered measures of success as well. It could also be the attainment of your childhood dream or some aspiration that you have, the achievements of those. I would consider that as success. Perhaps it could be business class flights, right? When you reach my age, you are going to have many friends, who spend on credit cards, and then those credit card bills are going to get them flyer miles, and those flyer miles they will use to change to get a business class flights over there. Okay, and I've seen many friends who are happy with what they have achieved via their credit card purchases over there. So that is an achievement that I think could be considered as a success as well. Or it could be some legacy that you want to leave for generations to come, right? Okay, so it depends. I think today none of us is going to aspire to build a pyramid that will last for generations, but it could be anything that you might want to work on to live to the subsequent generations. But what I hope to perhaps already highlighted, but stress again, which is that you need to strive for what matters to you, not what matters to other people. So I agree that achievements is going to be a measure of success. But those achievements should be achievements that matter to you, not achievements that matter to other people over there. And at the same time, you want to leverage on your strengths, and you want to leverage on the opportunities that are around you. Just like when I'm in Singapore, when I was starting out, I don't drive a car. Okay, but when I'm in the US, you don't have to pay COE. That's why I say, let's go ahead and get a car, right? So you want to look at the opportunities that are around you as well. And I hope you can see how achievements actually tie very well with the top 3 layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs over there. So achievements, I think you can see how that relates to realizing one's full potential, right? Where essentially being able to achieve this gives you an indication that you are able to achieve, you are able to reach this point. What's the next point you want to reach, and so on. Esteem. Being able to achieve all these things, this is where you will get the self-respect. And if you are humble about it, humble in how you present your achievements, you will probably get the respect of other people as well. Social connection and acceptance, once again as well, right? Having these achievements in themselves is a good thing, but if you are able to humbly present them to the people around you, it's going to help increase your social connection and acceptance as well. But I want to talk a bit, I want to give a few more examples. So achievements could also be just doing a good job. So your boss gives you a task, you do a good job on it, that in itself is achievement that you have done. The achievement could also be the saving of somebody's life, right? So perhaps you know of this event I think this was probably either in July or August. There was a sinkhole, and so the car fell into the sinkhole, and so there were some migrant workers who were nearby, and so quickly they helped to save the person's life over there. Okay, and so from an objective perspective, saving somebody's life is probably quite a big achievement, right? Compared to many of the things that you and me would go on to achieve in our lives over there. Okay, but these are things that you don't go looking for it, but the opportunity arises. You step in based on what you have over there. One thing I want to highlight about these two examples is that these are not things that you do to compete with other people. So I do a good job at my workplace, not because I want to be better than somebody else or to outcompete somebody else. But I do a good job at my role because of my own work ethics, because of my own work standards. So you are challenging yourself. You are competing against yourself, not against somebody else. These migrant workers, I like to believe, they save this driver, not because they're trying to outcompete somebody or what, right? But it is because of their values. They feel that a human life is valuable. And so when a human life is at risk, if I'm able to, I'm going to do what I can to help to save that human life. Okay, and so these are measures of success that are not going to be limited by things that are finite over there. Okay, but are going to be based on what matters to you. The second aspect of success I want to talk about is going to be relationships. Okay, and so once again, if you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs over here, obviously relationship would come very naturally under love and belonging, social connection and acceptance. But at the same time, it is going to have an impact on esteem, right? Whether others respect you and whether if you respect others. Does it help achieve self-actualization as well? And my answer is, I believe so. Because if you have reached my age, you are going to realize that human relations is not something that is easy. Okay? Maintaining a relationship between husband and wife, maintaining a relationship between parent and child, maintaining a relationship between your extended family. It is not a bed of roses over there. Okay, everybody is different. Everybody has their own peculiar type of character and so on. And so the fact that you are able to keep everybody together, that in itself, it's going to be a big achievement over there. Okay, and so I would like to believe that if you are able to cultivate a harmonious relationship among the people around you, that in itself is going to be an extremely big achievement. And so when I talk about relationship, I just want to bring up this study on happiness. So this is actually the world's longest scientific study on happiness. It's done by researchers at Harvard. So it has spanned for 80 over years. So over a course of 80 over years, they follow people, they interview them year after year, and then after that they interview their descendants and so on as well. Okay, so it has been ongoing for 80 over years. The question that they want to answer is, what makes a good life? And the conclusion that they get was good relationship. Okay, so for them, it wasn't like achievements, financial wealth or whatever. Their conclusion after 80 over years, I think this article was when the study was 85 years old. Their conclusion was that good relationships keep us healthier and happier over there. Okay, and so relationships is going to be a key aspect of a successful life as well. So once again, I think that this is where you need to recognize that what we are saying over here is that all things else being equal, somebody having a happy relationship is going to be happier than somebody who doesn't have a happy relationship. Because that's what scientific studies are, right? We don't ask about a single individual, but what we are asking about is what is the average over there? And all else being equal, somebody who is in a good relationship is going to be happier than somebody who is not in a good relationship. Okay, and so I think I've talked about how the achievements and also how relationship are aligned with Maslow's hierarchy of needs over here. And for most individuals, there will come a point in time where they're going to ask the question, what is the purpose of life? Okay, so maybe you're not at the age where, you're asking that question or your peers are asking that question. But some point in time, for most people, that question will arise. And that has to do with that self-actualization, right? Where you want to reach your full potential, you will ask yourself, what is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life over there? I don't think that we have a definite answer, but multiple people, multiple philosophers have talked about it, discussed about it. Some ideas that have been thrown out. The purpose of our life is to be happy. Okay, that potentially makes sense as well. The purpose of our life is to discover your gift, and your work is to give it away. Okay, so potentially your purpose in life is to gain self-awareness, and then after that, help the people around you after you have gained your self-awareness. Another quote, it says that he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. And so this quote basically just says that if you know the purpose of your life, then that is going to give you the rationale, the foundation to be able to overcome the challenges that you face over there. Okay, because if you do not know the purpose, if you do not know the reason, it is very hard to continue to sustain in a difficult position. But if you know the reason behind why you are on that path, then that is going to be that foundation that sustain you, to keep you true, to keep you going forward in whatever you are doing. Okay, and so what I hope to highlight over here is that it is important to think about what is your purpose over there. Because it is going to be the compass that is going to guide you in the decisions that you make. Okay, I think that in our course we have highlighted this many times, right? It is important for you to figure out your objective function first, because everything else is going to flow out of that. Same thing as well, okay? There comes a point in time, you will ask yourself, what is the purpose of life? And you need to figure that out. And it's only then you can then evaluate to see whether if you have walked on the right path or not. Okay, regarding purpose and being an academic institute preparing you for work life, I want to talk about this topic as well, which is purpose and also work. Why this is relevant? Because we spend a lot of our waking hours at work. This article was from back in 2019. So they say that Singaporeans work on average 45 hours a week, which they say is a lot. I believe that the numbers today is slightly lower. Nonetheless, we still do spend a lot of hours at work. But with this, I kind of want to highlight a few points over there, which is that when it comes to work, think beyond the salary. Okay, because work shouldn't just be in terms of getting a paycheck. Work should be more than that. You want to think about whether if that job is aligned with your life purpose and it's aligned with your life goals over there. And let me just say this. If you know nothing else, that means you don't know anything about yourself, you don't know anything about the job out there, and if salary is the only data point that you have, then sure, that's the only data point you have to work with, right? Then just go for salary. But what I'm saying is that try not to put yourself in that position 3 years down the road when you need to start looking for a job. Ideally, 3 years down the road when you're starting to look for your job, hopefully you have a better awareness as to what you like, what you don't like, what are your values, what are your work ethics, what type of work culture suits you, what type of work culture does not suit you. You want to understand your strengths. You want to understand your weaknesses over there. Okay, and so the next 3 years that you have, these are going to be good opportunities to help you figure all these things out, so that by the time you are looking for a job, you are not in the position to say that, you know what, I don't know anything. And so that's where we can only go with the salary. Okay, and so that is one message that I have for you. Okay, that it is, if you know nothing else, basing it off the salary is indeed probably the most objective way around it. But why put yourself in that position? Prepare during these 3 years to figure out for yourself, what is it that you want? So that the job that you eventually start out with is going to be well aligned with your life purpose and your goals. Will you get a full understanding of yourself in these 3 years? Probably not, right? It is only when you're at a job in an industry that you know more about it. But at least you don't go in blind. You kick off your exploration journey early. The other thing to highlight to you, which is that in the modern workplace, it can be difficult to understand the purpose of your work, the value of your work, and also the impact of your work. And the reason for it is because the modern work environment or the modern systems that we have are highly complicated. And so very often you are just one small part of this very complicated system over there. And so it is very normal, very natural that most employees don't really see how they fit into the overall business model or the business operations over there. So it is normal and it is common, but it is not ideal. Because if that is the situation that you are in, very easily you could feel that this job is going to be pointless. Okay, because if you don't see how you fit into the overall business operations, into the overall business goals, to you, you're just doing something that you don't even know if it's meaningful or not. Okay, and the job then really becomes a matter of just a paycheck. This is where, as industrial engineers, I hope you are aware that it is not optimal for you to be spending 45 hours of your time each week on something that doesn't add to your objective function in terms of your purpose in life. It is basically building up your constraint, that's all, right? Giving you more resources. The best scenario is that these 45 hours that you are spending at your workplace contributes positively to your overall life success as well. Okay? And so this is where, when you're at a job, find out more. Find out what your impact and your value is. Okay, understand the impact and the value of your work. There is one other thing I want to highlight over here, which is that not understanding your value and your impact at the workplace is actually a very dangerous position to be in. Because when a new challenger comes in, how do you know that you remain valuable to the company? And this is not something hypothetical, right? Because today, we have a lot of articles talking about how generative AI is competing with current employees for jobs over there. So when you do not know the value and the impact of what you are doing, how then do you convince companies' management that they should keep you rather than to replace you with generative AI? So you need to understand how you fit within the overall business model of the company, rather than just what you are doing as an individual. Okay, and so when times are good, when cash flows are flowing, market is booming, everything is fine, nobody thinks too much about it, right? Everyone is happy. But it doesn't mean that there's no issue, right? It is only when times start to get challenging, it's only when competitors start to come in. That is where your understanding of your impact, of your value, becomes important. Okay, and a typical saying that goes is that when the tide is up, you don't know who is swimming naked or who is swimming with swimming pants, right? It's only when the troubles come, where the tide resides, then you know who are the people who are wearing swimming pants and who are the ones who are naked over there. Okay, and this is a fact of life, right? That when things are going well, it doesn't mean that you are in a good position. It just means that conditions are such that you are not being stressed out. There's no stress being applied. But you need to be aware that when difficult conditions come, are you still able to remain valuable, remain impactful at your workplace over there? Okay, so you need to understand your impact at the workplace. Okay, so we come back to this idea of toxic competition. We have already talked about how we need to have a broader definition of success. And the second point that I want to highlight over here is that success should be based on things that are not limited. Not just because this is good, but because I hope I've convinced you that it is relevant to each one of us. That things that matter to us, actually most of these things are not really limited in nature. It could be things like personal achievements. It could be things like relationships. It could be things like, what is your life purpose over there? Okay? And so what I'm trying to say is that the competition that we have actually is not really necessary, because there's a different path for everybody, and there is plenty to go around. Okay, so let's come back to our Prime Minister's vision for Singapore. So this continues from that video message that he did last year over there. So his vision is one where we can all strive to be the best possible versions of ourselves. One where our success is defined by how we help each other to do well collectively. And he noted that we are in this together, and we truly succeed only when we succeed together. And in my opinion, I think that that third point is very important, which is that you need to recognize that we are all in it together. That means we are in the same boat. If the boat sinks, we all sink with it. Okay, and once you recognize that we need to succeed together in order to truly succeed, then I think that puts us in a good position. So let me talk. And so with that, I want to shift from competition to cooperation over there. Okay, recognizing that we are in it together, and we truly succeed only if we all succeed together. So this is where it's no longer so much about competition, but it is more about cooperation. So each one of us are going to have our own aspirations everything that we aspire, everything that we wish to pursue over there. The mathematical law remains. We cannot all be above average, but we can help each another to achieve what we are trying to achieve over there. So here I have an example. So a father wants to bring his family out for a nice meal, right? So he's not able to achieve this by himself. He's going to rely on the restaurant, he's going to rely on the waiting staff to give a pleasant experience to the whole family over there. Correct? And so if the father recognizes the value of the server, that this server is helping to create a wonderful dining experience for his family over there, then I believe that this father would treat the waiter with respect and also recognition as well. And when a customer treats the waiter with respect, I like to believe that the waiter would then also be more likely to provide a wonderful dining experience to the customer as well. Okay, and so I hope you can see over here, this is an example of a virtuous cycle where basically we are helping each another achieve the various goals over there. The father wants to create a wonderful environment for the family. The worker basically wants to find meaning and purpose in the work. Okay, and they can help each another with that. Recently, our senior minister, Lee Hsien Loong, I think this was probably just last month, right? I think he made a comment, urged immigrants not to flaunt their wealth or zoom their Ferraris or Lotus at night to show they have arrived. Okay, so this is the negative example that I kind of wanted to talk about over there. So we can speculate, right? We can speculate why people want to flaunt their wealth. Perhaps they feel that by flaunting their wealth, they are able to get the recognition, the respect from others. Perhaps they feel that by flaunting their wealth, they are able to get the social connection, the acceptance from others over there. Or perhaps they just like to flaunt their wealth for no particular reason. Okay, I mean, we don't know, right? But we can try to speculate that sort. Okay, but if we try to get recognition and respect by flaunting what we have, it could be your wealth, it could be your achievements or whatever, I'm going to say that it usually doesn't work out according to what you have planned. Because for strangers, where their only data point of view is the car you drive, perhaps driving a nice car is going to get the recognition, is going to get the respect. But strangers are not the people you're concerned about, right? Because you don't have to deal with them. For the people that matter to you, they are going to have a lot more data points. To the people that matter to you, you are not just the car that you drive. You are also how you deal with the people around you, how you treat the waiter at the restaurant, how you talk to your family members, how you resolve your family disputes and so on. And so for these people that matter, the car that you drive doesn't really matter anymore. Okay? And in fact, when you try to flaunt your wealth this way, it is going to negatively impact that relationship, right? Because you make people unhappy, people think you look down on them, even though you truly do not look down on them. You cannot control how people feel, right? And so perhaps you have somebody who drives their car and they just enjoy driving the car. Okay, but you do not know. At the end of the day, when people perceive that you're flaunting your wealth, that is going to negatively impact on the esteem and also the social connection. And the sad fact of life is this, which is that very often we make decisions thinking that it will help in certain aspects, but in retrospect, you realize that it actually negatively impacts it as well, impacted rather than having a positive aspect. And so with this, I think it drives home the point that we truly succeed only when we succeed together over there. So for example, if you love to drive a Ferrari, right? What should you do? If you are able to help everybody get a Ferrari, then you can drive your Ferrari without concern, right? Because nobody is going to be unhappy about you anymore, right? So it's this idea, and you don't have to go to the extreme. But if you are basically in good relationships with people, then you would be able to enjoy the things that you do. Okay, but if everybody around you hates you, is out to get you, you will not be able to enjoy anything that you have, even though it could be your right. But you are not going to have the peace of mind to enjoy it. Okay, with that, I've come to my summary over here. So what I want to say is that competition in Singapore is unhealthy, and it is to the detriment of actually everybody. And we have two solutions. The first one, we need a broader definition of success. We need to help people recognize that the optimal path to success differs for everybody. And we also need to help people discover what is their path to success. At the same time, ideally, success should be based on things that are not limited. And I hope I've given you various examples. Personal achievements, doing well at your job, potentially saving somebody's life, or just helping somebody around you. Could also be relationships as well. Could also be your purpose in life. These are things that are not limited or finite in nature. So we talked about the need for self-awareness. You need to be able to understand your values, your preferences, what is important to you, what you like, what you don't like, your strengths and your weaknesses over there. Okay, and the self-awareness is going to be the compass that guides you to help you figure out what is the path to take. It is also going to be the one that allows you to do an evaluation, whether if you're on the right path or not. Another key point to highlight over here is there is value in information. Okay, so do not be overly conservative in avoiding making mistakes, because you need to recognize that sometimes these mistakes are just part of that exploration process. And the value that you get from that information is going to outweigh the costs that you put in. And then the last one over here, which is that in the end, you need to realize that we are in it together. Okay, like it or not, these are your neighbors, these are the people that you live with. Okay, and so you are only going to be able to enjoy what you have. You are only able to succeed only if you succeed together with the people around you. And so that's where the mindset needs to shift from competition to cooperation. Okay, so I've talked about how today's topic is not going to be examinable, right? I hope I've given you some glimpse as to how it relates to our lecture. But let me just do a quick recap on some of the key concepts that I hope you will take away from the course. The first one over here is the importance of the objective function in guiding your decisions and also allowing you to do a post-assessment of whether what you have done is correct or wrong. Okay, I know I mentioned this many times. In fact, if you look at your regression models, your machine learning models and so on, what is important is your error measure, your objective function. Only then are you able to figure out which method, which solution is the best solution. Same thing for a successful life as well. The other thing that features a lot in this course is I hope I have convinced you of the need to be comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty. And hopefully not just convince you of the need, but also to provide you with some tools to deal with ambiguity and uncertainty over there. Okay, so we've talked about simulation, we've talked about probability. I hope those are helpful. A few things to take note of over here. The first one is all models are wrong. Be it your prediction model, be it your objective function for the transportation problem, or be it for even the definition of happiness over there. All models are going to be wrong. But the models can still be useful in helping you make decisions over there. Okay, so don't wait to have the perfect model. work with what you have. The second one over here, it's this idea of value of information. Okay, so recognize that information is valuable, and so you want to be able to pay a bit to be able to reduce some of your ambiguity, to reduce some of your uncertainty. But also do not go to the extreme where we say that you need to get complete clarity before you make a decision, because the cost of getting that information is probably too high, or perhaps it's not even possible to get full clarity in practice. The last one over here, it's the need to make dynamic decisions over there. Okay, part of embracing ambiguity and uncertainty is that you don't wait for full clarity to proceed. You need to be able to just proceed along the way, learn more about the problem, and tailor your decisions accordingly over there. Okay, and so for this, we have introduced to you various concepts like probability, which is a mathematical way for you to quantify uncertainty. We have talked about conditional probability, which gives you a mathematical way for you to update your information. We've also given you two mathematical frameworks. We've talked about Markov decision processes. We have also talked about decision trees, where you can structure your decision to help you figure out how do you progress in your decision making despite having some uncertainty or ambiguity. Okay, and with that, I think that's all that I have.